Hey, welcome in. Get comfortable, let the day fade out, and we'll ease into a quiet story from the Iliad. Before the first spear is thrown, before Achilles withdraws his strength, before Hector walks the walls of Troy, there is a world that must be understood. The Iliad does not emerge from nothing. It rises out of memory, geography, ritual, and a long tradition of stories carried by voice across centuries. This is a world balanced between history and myth. A world where palaces glittered with bronze, where kings ruled from stone halls, where the sea was both highway and grave, and where the gods were not distant ideas but constant presences, listening, interfering, choosing sides. To step into the Iliad, we begin not at Troy but earlier. We begin in the late Bronze Age Aegean. Between roughly 1600 and 1200 years before the Common Era, mainland Greece was dominated by what modern scholars call Mycenaean civilization. This was not a unified nation, but a network of powerful palace centers: Mycena, Pylos, Tiryns, Thebes, each ruled by a wanax, a king whose authority was both military and sacred. These palaces were fortified with massive stone walls, built from blocks so large, later Greeks believed only giants could have placed them. Within, scribes kept records on clay tablets, cataloging livestock, weapons, textiles, offerings to gods. Power was centralized. Society was hierarchical. At the top stood the warrior elite, whose status was measured by land, armor, followers, and favor from the divine. This was a world fluent in violence. Weapons were not symbols. They were necessities: bronze swords, spears tipped with leaf-shaped blades, tower shields made from layered hides. Warfare was seasonal, personal, and brutal. Raiding was common. Honor was earned through visible action. The sea bound this world together. Ships moved men, goods, and stories across the Aegean, from Crete to the Anatolian coast, from Cyprus to the Peloponnese. Mycenaean influence traveled by oar and sail. Troy, situated near the Dardanelles, stood at a choke point between worlds, controlling access between the Aegean and the Black Sea. Its wealth and position made it valuable and vulnerable. Around 1200 years before the Common Era, this palace system collapsed. The reasons are still debated: earthquakes, internal unrest, climate stress, migration, warfare. Likely all played a role. Palaces burned. Writing disappeared. Trade networks fractured. What followed was a long period with little written record. But stories survived. Songs about great kings, about long wars, about heroes larger than life, were preserved by poets who performed for audiences hungry for connection to a vanished age. These singers did not memorize fixed texts. They worked within tradition, shaping stories anew each time, guided by formula, rhythm, and expectation. The Iliad is the product of this world of memory. It looks back to the Bronze Age through the lens of later generations, blending accurate details, armor types, burial practices, social values, with poetic embellishment. It is not history in the modern sense, but it preserves emotional truth about how that world understood itself. In the Iliad, gods are not abstractions. They are characters with desires, rivalries, loyalties, and grudges. They eat, argue, deceive, and intervene directly in human affairs. Zeus stands at the center, not all-powerful but supreme. His authority rests on balance. He weighs fates, listens to pleas, and struggles to maintain order among gods, who are anything but obedient. Hera resents Troy because Paris judged Aphrodite more beautiful. Athena shares that resentment, her pride wounded. Poseidon holds an old grudge from a broken oath. Apollo protects Troy, honoring Priam and punishing Greek arrogance. Aphrodite shields Paris and Helen, preserving the consequences of her promise. The gods take sides, but not out of justice. They act out of loyalty, vanity, affection, and revenge. Mortals suffer as a result. Divine intervention does not erase human choice. Instead, it magnifies it. When a hero falls, the gods may guide the moment, but the decision to stand, to fight, to refuse retreat remains human. At the heart of the Iliad lies a value system that shapes every action: honor. Honor is public. It exists in the eyes of others. It is measured by gifts, by recognition, by precedence. To lose honor is to lose standing. To gain it is to secure memory beyond death. Closely tied to honor is glory, the kind that survives when the body does not. Heroes know their lives are short. What matters is how they are remembered. This is why insults matter, why seized prizes provoke rage, why words spoken in assembly can wound as deeply as spears. Achilles is not merely angry because he loses Briseis. He is angry because his worth is denied. His withdrawal is not petulance. It is a statement that without honor, life is hollow. One of the deepest moral laws of this world is guest friendship. A host must protect a guest. A guest must respect a host's household. Bonds formed this way can span generations. The Trojan War begins when this law is broken. Paris travels to Sparta as a guest. Menelaus receives him with generosity. While his host is away, Paris takes Helen and flees. Whether Helen leaves willingly or under compulsion varies by tradition. What does not vary is the violation. Paris breaks trust. The offense demands a response. This is not simply a personal grievance. It threatens the fabric of social order. Long before armies gather, before ships are built, the conflict is seated at a wedding. When Peleus, a mortal hero, marries the sea nymph Thetis, all gods are invited, except Eris, spirit of discord. She arrives anyway, casting a golden apple marked for the fairest. Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite each claim it. Zeus refuses to judge, aware that choosing anyone would bring lasting resentment. Instead, he appoints Paris, a Trojan prince raised as a shepherd, to decide. Each goddess offers a bribe. Hera promises power and kingship. Athena promises victory and wisdom in war. Aphrodite promises the most beautiful woman in the world. Paris chooses Aphrodite. In that choice, personal desire outweighs responsibility. The reward is Helen. The cost is war. Helen is both central and elusive. She is the reason given for the war, yet she is also one of its sharpest critics. In Troy, she is isolated, admired, blamed, mournful. She recognizes the destruction her presence has brought and speaks with bitterness about her own fate. She is not portrayed as simple temptation. She is perceptive, regretful, and trapped within forces larger than herself. Divine promises, political alliances, male decisions. Before Helen's marriage, her many suitors threatened chaos. To prevent bloodshed, an oath was sworn. All would defend the chosen husband against any who violated the marriage. Menelaus is chosen. Years later, when Helen is taken, the oath is called in. Kings who might otherwise refuse, who have no personal stake, are bound by their word. This oath transforms a private offense into a pan-Hellenic war. From across Greece, leaders answer the call. Agamemnon, king of Mycenae, takes command, not because he is the greatest warrior, but because he is the most powerful ruler. Odysseus brings cunning and endurance. Ajax brings unmatched strength. Nestor brings memory and counsel. Achilles brings something else entirely, unmatched excellence in battle, paired with an acute awareness of his own destiny. Each hero arrives with followers, ships, and expectations. Each carries private motives alongside public duty. From birth, Achilles' fate is known. He can live a long, quiet life without fame, or a short life crowned with eternal glory. When he chooses to go to Troy, he chooses the latter. This knowledge does not make him fearless. It makes every insult heavier, every loss sharper, every moment charged with finality. Thetis knows what this choice will cost her. She supports her son, even as she mourns him in advance. By the time the fleet gathers, the war already exists as story. Heroes know they are stepping into something larger than themselves. The audience knows too. The Iliad does not begin with the fall of Troy, or even with the war's start. It begins with rage, because rage is what remains when honor is broken and fate closes in. The world before the war is one where every choice echoes, where gods listen, where memory is power, and where death is certain, but meaning is not. This is the ground on which the Iliad stands. The decision to go to war does not arrive all at once. It spreads slowly, carried by messengers, by memory, by obligation older than any single king. By the time ships begin to gather, the conflict has already taken root in the minds of those who will fight it. For the Greek world, this is not a spontaneous expedition. It is a reckoning. The weight of leadership falls first on Agamemnon, king of Mycenae. He is not the greatest warrior among the Achaeans, nor the most beloved, nor the wisest. What he possesses is reach. His kingdom is wealthy, his authority recognized, his power institutional rather than personal. Other kings rule their own lands, but Agamemnon stands above them as a coordinator of force. This authority is fragile. He commands men who are kings themselves, proud, autonomous, keenly aware of their own honor. Agamemnon cannot rule them as subjects. He must persuade, reward, and threaten in careful measure. From the beginning, this tension defines the Greek coalition. The war is justified publicly as retribution for Helen. Privately, it is bound together by an oath sworn years earlier, when Helen's beauty drew suitors from across Greece. To prevent violence among them, a pact was made. All would defend the chosen husband if the marriage were violated. When Paris takes Helen from Sparta, that oath is activated. Some kings respond eagerly, others hesitate. Odysseus, king of Ithaca, is among those who resist the call. He has a new wife, a newborn son, and a mind keen enough to recognize the cost of what is being asked. When messengers arrive, he feigns madness, yoking an ox and a donkey together, and sowing salt into the fields. The ruse fails. His infant son is placed before the plow. Odysseus stops. In that moment, he chooses duty over desire, reputation over peace. The decision will follow him for decades. Achilles' choice is different, but no less deliberate. From childhood, his fate has been clear. He may live long and be forgotten, or die young and be remembered forever. When the call to Troy comes, he understands what it means. His mother, Thetis, does as well. She does not forbid him, she equips him. Thetis knows the cost is absolute. She also knows that denying Achilles his nature would be another kind of death. The decision is made not with joy, but with clarity. As the kings gather, so do their contingents. Each ship carries more than soldiers. It carries rivalries, histories, unspoken tensions. Men who will stand shoulder to shoulder in battle already measure one another, already calculate who will be remembered and who will fade. The fleet assembles at Aulis. Here, the scale of the undertaking becomes real. Hundreds of ships, thousands of men, supplies, animals, weapons. The shoreline fills with noise and movement, anticipation and unease. But the winds do not come. The fleet is trapped, held in place by still air. Days stretch into uncertainty. Explanations turn quickly toward the divine. The seer Calchas speaks what others fear. Artemis has been offended. The cause is Agamemnon himself. In some traditions, the offense is a boast. In others, a slain sacred animal. What matters is the remedy demanded. To appease the goddess, Agamemnon must sacrifice his daughter, Iphigenia. The decision fractures the coalition. Agamemnon hesitates, argues, resists. But leadership in this world is not gentle. The war cannot proceed without his compliance. He chooses the expedition over his child. Iphigenia is summoned under false pretenses. In some versions, she is killed. In others, Artemis intervenes at the last moment, substituting a deer and carrying the girl away. The Iliad itself does not dwell on the episode, but its shadow lingers. The war begins with blood not yet shed at Troy. When the winds finally rise, the fleet departs. The crossing is not smooth, storms scatter ships, landings fail. Some Greeks attack the wrong cities, mistaking them for Troy. Years pass before the army fully establishes itself on Trojan soil. These early missteps matter. They erode confidence. They reveal how little control the leaders truly have. The first clashes near Troy are probing, uncertain. The Trojans defend their land fiercely. Allies arrive to support them, drawn by loyalty, obligation, and shared fear of Greek dominance. For the Greeks, the war settles into a rhythm of raids, skirmishes, and stalemate. No decisive blow is struck. Heroes distinguish themselves, but the city stands. Departure has cost everything. Victory remains distant. By the time the war reaches the moment where the Iliad opens, nearly 10 years in, the coalition is strained. Pride has hardened. Patience has thinned. Leaders are brittle with exhaustion. The war they imagined has not arrived. What remains is endurance. And it is in this atmosphere of obligation, sacrifice, and unresolved tension that the rage of Achilles will soon ignite, reshaping the fate of both armies. Across the narrow waters of the Hellespont stands a city that has learned to endure attention. Troy does not rise quietly from the plain. It announces itself in stone, in height, in confidence shaped by generations of survival. Long before Greek ships line the shore, Troy is already a place accustomed to being watched. Its walls are its first language. They are massive, layered, engineered, not only to repel force but to communicate permanence. Later tradition will claim they were raised with divine help, but even without myth, the truth remains. Troy is built to last. Towers command the plain. Gates channel movement. From the heights, defenders can see dust rising miles away. The city's position explains much of its fate. Troy sits near the meeting point of worlds, where sea routes narrow and land routes converge. Trade passes through its reach. Influence follows. Wealth accumulates. And with wealth comes envy. Yet Troy is not simply a fortress. It is a living city. Within the walls, life continues, even as war encroaches. Markets operate. Families gather. Rituals are observed. The rhythms of ordinary existence persist under extraordinary threat. This is not a city of faceless antagonists. It is a community bound by kinship, memory, and shared vulnerability. At its center stands Priam, king of Troy. He is old by the time the war begins, and older still when the Iliad opens. His strength is not physical. It lies in restraint, in experience, in a deep awareness of how fragile human fortune can be. Priam has ruled long enough to have seen prosperity and loss. He has buried children. He has watched alliances form and fracture. His authority rests less on command than on recognition. Others listen to him not because he is feared, but because he has endured. Beside him stands Hecuba, queen of Troy. Where Priam is measured, Hecuba is fierce. Her grief is close to the surface, sharpened by years of anxiety and foreboding. She understands the cost of war, not as abstraction, but as the slow narrowing of possibility for her children. Together they preside over a household crowded with sons and daughters, each carrying different hopes, different flaws, different destinies. The war threatens them all. Among these children, Hector stands apart. Hector is Troy's defender, but more than that, he is its conscience. He does not fight for glory alone. He fights because someone must stand between the city and destruction. His courage is shaped by responsibility, not appetite. He is a husband, a father, a son. These roles weigh on him, informing every choice. When he takes up arms, he does so knowing exactly what is at risk if he fails. Hector understands the Greeks. He understands their hunger for renown, their relentless pressure. He also understands Troy's limitations. He knows the city cannot afford endless heroics. Defense requires patience, restraint, and sacrifice. His relationship with his wife Andromache reveals the cost of this understanding. Andromache has already lost much of her family to war. She pleads with Hector to stay within the walls, to command from safety, to survive. Hector listens, and then he goes. He does not dismiss her fear, he shares it, but he cannot escape his role. To do so would be to abandon not only Troy, but the identity he has lived by. Their son, Astyanax, is too young to understand any of this. He knows only the weight of his father's helmet, the sound of his mother's voice, the presence of arms that lift him briefly above the world. The future of Troy rests symbolically in him, and that future is already under threat. If Hector is Troy's shield, Paris is its wound. Paris is not without courage, but it is inconsistent. He is skilled with the bow, quick to act when advantage favors him, quicker still to retreat when danger closes in. His defining trait is not cowardice but avoidance. He does not seek responsibility. Responsibility finds him anyway. Paris is the reason the war exists. His choice at the judgment, his taking of Helen, his refusal to return her, each action compounds the cost borne by others. Yet Paris himself rarely confronts that cost directly. Within Troy, he is tolerated more than admired. Hector rebukes him openly, others whisper, but blood ties protect him, even as his presence invites disaster. Helen's position within the city reflects this tension. She is treated with respect, but never with ease. She watches from the walls as men die because of her presence. She names Greek heroes as they approach, her voice carrying recognition and regret. She belongs fully to neither side. Helen understands the Greeks intimately, yet she lives among Trojans who pay the price for her fate. Her awareness sharpens her isolation. She speaks often of shame, of longing for the moment before everything fractured. Her beauty remains, but it is a burden rather than a weapon. Around Troy gather allies drawn from across Anatolia. They come not out of devotion to Paris, but out of loyalty to Priam, shared enmity toward Greek expansion, and obligation forged through diplomacy and marriage. Each ally brings unique strengths and vulnerabilities. Their presence turns the war into something larger than a single city's defense. Troy becomes the center of a regional struggle, its survival intertwined with the balance of power across the eastern Aegean. The gods mirror this alignment. Apollo favors Troy deeply. He walks its streets unseen, accepts its prayers, defends its people when Greek arrogance overreaches. His arrows bring plague to the Greek camp. His guidance steadies Trojan resolve. Aphrodite protects Paris and Helen, not because they deserve protection, but because they are the instruments of her promise. Her interventions are personal, intimate, often desperate. Against them stand Athena and Hera, relentless in their desire to see Troy fall. Their hatred is not strategic. It is emotional, rooted in insult and wounded pride. The war becomes a theater for divine resentment as much as human ambition. For the Trojans, this imbalance is impossible to escape. They fight knowing that some gods favor them, others despise them, and none will guarantee survival. Life within the walls adapts to siege conditions. Supplies are rationed, morale rises and falls with each skirmish. Families listen for news from the field. Rituals multiply as uncertainty grows. Priam allows debate, councils form, decisions are weighed carefully. Unlike the Greek camp, where authority is contested openly, Troy's leadership operates through consensus, shaped by fear and hope in equal measure. This cohesion is Troy's strength and its vulnerability. The city's survival depends on individuals continuing to sacrifice themselves for the whole. As years pass, exhaustion settles in. Children grow up knowing nothing but war. Old men remember peace as something distant and unreal. The walls still stand, but the cost of standing grows heavier with each season. By the time the Iliad begins, Troy is not optimistic. It is resolute. It knows it may fall, but it will not fall quietly. The defenders of Troy fight, not because they believe victory is assured, but because surrender would erase everything they are. The city exists not only in stone, but in memory, in lineage, in shared endurance. To the Greeks, Troy is an obstacle. To those within its walls, it is home. And it is this difference between conquest and preservation that gives the war its tragic weight long before the first clash of heroes that the Iliad records. The story that the Iliad tells does not begin with the launching of ships or the clash of armies. It begins with an emotion, rage. A specific rage, born not in battle but in words spoken before an assembly. By the 10th year of the war, both armies are worn thin. The Greeks have endured stalemate, disease, and the slow erosion of morale. Supplies are strained. Confidence is brittle. The war has become less about swift victory and more about survival. When plague strikes the Greek camp, it does not arrive without warning. Apollo sends it in response to insult, not accident. Chryses, a priest of Apollo, comes to the camp seeking the return of his daughter, Chryseis, taken as a prize by Agamemnon. He offers ransom. He appeals to custom, to piety, to restraint. Agamemnon refuses. The refusal is public, sharp, and humiliating. Chryseis is driven away, dishonored. Apollo answers immediately. Arrows fall unseen, men sicken and die. The camp fills with smoke from pyres. It is Achilles who calls the assembly. This detail matters. He is not the highest-ranking king, but he is respected enough to demand order. His concern is not only for the suffering men, but for the erosion of honor that unchecked leadership brings. Calchas, the seer, reveals the cause of the plague, but only after Achilles promises protection. The truth places blame squarely on Agamemnon. The king must return Chryseis to her father and appease Apollo. Agamemnon agrees, but not without cost. He insists that his honor be restored immediately. If he gives up his prize, he will take another. His gaze settles on Achilles. What follows is not a misunderstanding. It is a collision of values. For Achilles, honor is earned through excellence in battle. He has risked his life repeatedly, fought at the front, and carried the Greeks through years of fighting. His prize, Chryseis, is not simply a woman. She is a visible marker of his worth. For Agamemnon, honor is positional. He is king. His authority must be seen, even if it is enforced at the expense of those who serve him. When Agamemnon takes Chryseis, he strips Achilles of recognition in front of the entire army. Achilles does not respond with violence, though the impulse is there. Athena restrains him, appearing unseen to others. This moment reveals the depth of Achilles' struggle. He is capable of immediate bloodshed, yet still bound by limits, both divine and internal. Instead, he withdraws. The withdrawal is total. Achilles refuses to fight. He removes his men from the field. He allows the Greeks to suffer without his strength. This decision is often framed as petulance. It is not. Achilles is making a statement about value. If his excellence earns no respect, then it will not be given freely. His absence becomes a weapon. He turns to his mother, Thetis. She listens without judgment. She understands the depth of his wound. Achilles asks her to appeal to Zeus, not for victory, but for recognition. Let the Greeks feel what they have lost. Thetis approaches Zeus at a moment of vulnerability. He listens. He agrees. This agreement reshapes the war. From this point forward, events unfold under the weight of divine endorsement. Zeus shifts the balance, allowing Trojan success not because they are stronger, but because the Greeks must learn humility. Within the Greek camp, tension escalates. Agamemnon attempts to test morale, suggesting retreat. The suggestion nearly succeeds. Men rush for the ships. It takes the intervention of Odysseus and others to restore order. Leadership fractures along invisible lines. Authority exists, but trust does not. Without Achilles, Greek strategy becomes reactive. Heroes step forward, but none can replace what has been withdrawn. Each success is partial. Each failure compounds anxiety. For Achilles, withdrawal is not peace. He remains close enough to see the cost of his absence. He hears the cries of wounded men. He watches the tide turn. Yet he does not relent. His rage is not impulsive. It is sustained. It is fed by memory, by pride, by the certainty that yielding now would erase the point he is making. The gods, meanwhile, maneuver openly. Hera and Athena seek to undermine Zeus's decision. Apollo supports Trojan advances. Battles become stages for divine rivalry. Human agency persists within this chaos. Warriors choose to stand or fall. Leaders choose to speak or remain silent. But the frame has shifted. The war is no longer about Helen alone. It is about authority, recognition, and the consequences of denying worth. Achilles' withdrawal forces every character to confront their dependence on others. It exposes the limits of command and the danger of pride, unchecked by empathy. This is the heart of the Iliad. Not the clash of armies, but the fracture of trust. From this fracture will come greater violence, deeper loss, and a reckoning that neither side can escape. With Achilles absent from the field, the war changes its character. Strength gives way to improvisation. Confidence thins. What had once depended on a single, overwhelming presence must now be carried by many, each imperfect, each vulnerable. The Greeks feel the absence immediately. Their formations hold, but without the pressure Achilles once applied, momentum falters. The Trojans sense it as well. What had been containment becomes opportunity. Zeus's decision begins to manifest not as spectacle, but as accumulation. Small advantages compound. Trojan sorties push further, Greek defenses strain. Among the Greeks, Diomedes steps forward. Diomedes is young, aggressive, and unburdened by the long memory that weighs on older heroes. In the absence of Achilles, he becomes the focal point of Greek resistance. His fighting is relentless, efficient, and bold enough to draw divine attention. With Athena's support, Diomedes wounds Aphrodite when she attempts to rescue her son Aeneas. He later strikes Ares himself. These acts are extraordinary, not because they harm gods, but because they momentarily invert the natural order. A mortal challenges the divine and survives. Yet even Diomedes has limits. His success does not break the Trojan line. It buys time, nothing more. Ajax the Greater becomes the wall the Greeks lean against. Where Diomedes is motion, Ajax is endurance. He does not pursue glory with speed or cunning. He holds ground. Shield locked, spear ready, he absorbs pressure that would shatter lesser men. Ajax stands where others fall back. He covers retreats. He confronts Hector directly, neither yielding nor advancing decisively. Their clashes are brutal, unresolved, emblematic of the larger stalemate. Odysseus contributes differently. Without Achilles, intellect gains value. Odysseus advises caution, positioning, timing. He speaks when others shout. He understands that survival now depends on coordination rather than dominance. Still, even cleverness cannot erase the imbalance. The Trojans press harder with each passing day. Hector leads them. With Achilles absent, Hector's confidence grows, not from arrogance, but from recognition of opportunity. He rallies allies, tightens formations, and brings the fight closer to the Greek ships. This shift is decisive. The ships are more than vessels. They are lifelines. To lose them would mean isolation, starvation, and eventual annihilation. The Trojans breach the Greek wall. Fire touches the ships. Panic ripples through the camp. Men who once believed in inevitable victory now face the possibility of total defeat. Appeals are made. Gifts are offered. Agamemnon attempts reconciliation, sending envoys to Achilles with promises of wealth, honor, and restored standing. Achilles refuses. The refusal is calm, reasoned, and devastating. He no longer trusts words shaped by desperation. He will not trade certainty for promises that can be withdrawn. The Greeks return to the field without him. Battle intensifies, death becomes constant. Named warriors fall, anonymous soldiers die in clusters. The ground absorbs blood until it is indistinguishable from mud. The gods intervene openly now. Lines blur between mortal effort and divine manipulation. Hera and Athena push Greeks forward when they falter. Apollo drives Trojans onward, steadying Hector's hand. No side escapes cost. As the fighting peaks, exhaustion overtakes restraint. Warriors fight beyond prudence. Hector, flushed with success, presses too far, ignoring counsel. His advance brings him glory but also risk. Still, Troy holds momentum. Within the Greek camp, despair hardens into resolve. They fight not because victory seems likely, but because retreat promises worse. Every man understands what awaits if the ships burn. Achilles watches. He hears the cries. He sees the fires. He knows the point he has made is complete, and yet he remains apart. What he does not yet know is that the cost of proving his worth will soon be paid by someone else. The war without Achilles exposes the truth beneath heroism. No single man can carry an army forever. No absence goes unfelt. No pride exists without consequence. The balance has shifted, and the moment is approaching when that balance will demand a sacrifice neither side expects. While Achilles remains withdrawn, another figure stands close enough to feel the heat of the war without stepping fully into it. Patroclus is not the greatest warrior among the Greeks, nor does he seek to be. His importance lies elsewhere, in empathy, restraint, and the ability to see suffering without turning away. Patroclus has grown up beside Achilles. Their bond is older than the war, older even than the promise of glory that defines Achilles' path. In a world where relationships are often forged through rivalry and status, theirs is marked by trust. Achilles is the stronger, faster, more brilliant presence. Patroclus is the steadier one, the voice that tempers excess. He tends the wounded. He listens. He remembers names. As the fighting intensifies near the ships, Patroclus can no longer endure watching the Greeks suffer, while Achilles remains apart. The cries from the battlefield reach him clearly. Each loss feels personal. The point Achilles has made is undeniable now, but the cost continues to rise. Patroclus approaches Achilles not with accusation, but with appeal. He does not challenge Achilles' reasoning. He acknowledges the insult, the injustice, the depth of the wound. But he also speaks for the army, the men who will die if nothing changes. He asks for permission. If Achilles will not fight, Patroclus will go in his place. The request is careful. Patroclus does not claim equality with Achilles. He asks only to borrow what Achilles represents, to wear his armor, to lead the Myrmidons, to turn the tide long enough to save the ships. Achilles hesitates. He understands the risk immediately. The armor carries not just protection, but expectation. To appear as Achilles is to invite challenges meant for Achilles alone. Yet Achilles also sees the necessity. Pride has proven its point. Further delay threatens annihilation. He agrees, but with limits. Patroclus is instructed to drive the Trojans away from the ships, then return. Do not pursue glory. Do not press toward Troy. Do not forget who you are. The armor is fitted. The transformation is immediate. From a distance, the Greeks believe Achilles has returned. Hope surges. The Myrmidons charge with renewed ferocity. Patroclus fights well. He is not Achilles, but he is capable. His presence alone disrupts Trojan momentum. Men fall back. The ships are saved. The line stabilizes. Victory intoxicates. As the Trojans retreat, Patroclus follows. What began as necessity becomes pursuit. The boundary Achilles set begins to blur. The gods are watching. Apollo intervenes first, striking Patroclus from behind, shattering his balance and breaking the illusion of invincibility. In that moment, Patroclus is exposed, not as Achilles, but as himself. Euphorbus wounds him next, a lesser blow that nonetheless weakens him further. Finally, Hector meets him face to face. Hector understands the moment. He does not boast. He does not hesitate. He strikes. Patroclus falls. As he dies, Patroclus speaks, not in fear, but in clarity. He names the forces that brought him down. He foretells Hector's fate. He reminds his killer that victory is never solitary. The death of Patroclus is not a simple battlefield loss. It is a rupture. The Greeks fight desperately to recover his body. Ajax and Menelaus hold the line. the struggle becomes ferocious, fueled by grief and disbelief. When word reaches Achilles, it does not arrive gently. Achilles collapses. The sound he makes is described not as speech, but as something roar. Grief strips him of restraint. The armor he lent has become a shroud. Thetis hears her son's cry from the depths of the sea. She knows what it means. Achilles' choice has reached its cost. Patroclus' death shatters the balance Achilles believed he controlled. Pride gives way to guilt. Withdrawal gives way to fury. The war is no longer about recognition. It is about loss. The man who held Achilles back is gone. What remains is a force unbound by moderation. The sacrifice demanded by the war has been paid, and it is more than anyone intended. From this moment forward, nothing will slow Achilles again. Grief does not soften Achilles, it strips him. When Patroclus dies, something essential is torn away. The restraint that once tempered Achilles' rage vanishes with the man who embodied it. What remains is not sorrow alone, but a violence sharpened by guilt. Achilles understands with devastating clarity that his withdrawal made Patroclus' death possible. This knowledge does not lead him inward, it drives him outward. Achilles' mourning is immediate and overwhelming. He lies in the dust, tearing at the earth, his cries carrying across the shore. The Myrmidons gather in silence, unsure how to approach a grief so absolute. This is not the measured anger of insulted honor. This is loss without remedy. Thetis rises from the sea to meet her son. She knows what this moment means. Achilles has already chosen his path again, and it leads only one way. By returning to battle, he seals his fate. Achilles does not ask to be spared. He asks for arms. The armor he lent to Patroclus is gone, stripped from the body by Hector. Achilles cannot return to the field without protection. Thetis goes to Hephaestus, the smith god, whose skill transforms raw material into permanence. Hephaestus works without hesitation. What he forges is not merely equipment, but meaning shaped into metal. The shield alone bears images of the world Achilles is about to leave behind. Cities at peace and at war, fields worked by farmers, weddings, judgments, dances. Life, in its fullness, is etched into the surface of an object meant for destruction. When Achilles receives the armor, he does not linger on its beauty. He understands its purpose. He understands its cost. Before he enters battle, reconciliation is forced upon the Greek leadership. Agamemnon returns Briseis and offers gifts, swearing that he never touched her. The gesture is late, but it is made. Achilles accepts it without satisfaction. The quarrel that once defined the war no longer matters. Honor has been eclipsed by grief. No gift can restore what has been lost. When Achilles steps onto the field, the effect is immediate. Even before he strikes, the Trojans feel his presence. His voice alone, amplified by Athena, drives fear through their ranks. Men turn before weapons meet. Achilles fights with a singular purpose. He does not seek challenge. He does not pause for recognition. He kills relentlessly, methodically, without mercy. The river Scamander rises against him, choked with bodies. Even nature recoils from the excess. Achilles battles the river itself, saved only by divine intervention as fire and water clash. This is no longer heroic warfare as it once existed. It is annihilation. The gods observe uneasily. Some assist, others withdraw. Achilles has become something dangerous, even to them, a mortal acting with the intensity of a force beyond balance. Hector waits inside the walls of Troy. He knows Achilles is coming. He understands what has been unleashed. Yet he remains, not because he believes he will win, but because he cannot allow Achilles to reach the city unchecked. Achilles' return has ended debate. It has ended restraint. It has turned the war into a countdown. The fury that drives him forward is not sustainable. It burns toward a single confrontation. And when it arrives, there will be no turning back for Achilles, for Hector, or for Troy itself. The meeting between Hector and Achilles is not sudden. It is anticipated by everyone who still draws breath on the plain before Troy. Each step Achilles takes toward the city tightens the silence. Each life he takes clears the path toward a confrontation that can no longer be delayed. Inside the walls, Troy watches. Priam stands on the ramparts, his hands raised not in command but in pleading. He sees what Achilles has become. He understands what his son faces. Priam calls to Hector, urging him to retreat behind the gates, to let the walls do what walls were built to do. He offers shame as a lesser price than death. Hecuba joins him, tearing at her clothes, reminding Hector of the life that still exists beyond the field. She speaks as a mother, not a queen. She speaks of nourishment, of childhood, of bonds that do not survive heroics. Hector listens, and then he steps forward. Hector's choice is not driven by illusion. He knows Achilles will kill him. He has known it for some time. What holds him in place is not confidence, but duty. If he retreats now, the terror Achilles brings will pour through the gates unchecked. The city will fall not by siege, but by panic. When Achilles appears, he is unrecognizable from the man who once argued in assembly. His armor burns in the light. His eyes do not search for equals. They fix on a single target. At the sight of him, Hector's resolve falters. He turns and runs. 3 times they circle the city, Achilles closing the distance effortlessly, Hector driven by instinct rather than plan. From the walls, Trojans watch their defender flee. From the plain, Greeks hold their breath. No one intervenes. The gods decide the moment. Athena approaches Hector in the guise of his brother, offering reassurance, promising aid. Hector believes her. He turns to stand his ground. The deception lasts only seconds. Hector hurls his spear. It strikes true, but Achilles' armor holds. When Hector reaches for another, there is nothing there. He understands. The choice remains. Hector does not beg. He does not plead for his life. He asks only that his body be returned to his family, that his parents be allowed to mourn him properly. Achilles refuses. The refusal is not theatrical. It is empty. Rage has consumed empathy. Achilles drives his spear through Hector's throat. The defender of Troy falls where he stands. With his final breath, Hector speaks a warning. Achilles will not outlive him by long. Fate has already measured their lives. Achilles hears nothing. What follows is not victory, but desecration. Achilles pierces Hector's ankles, binds his body to his chariot, and drags it through the dust. The act horrifies gods and mortals alike. Even those who hate Troy recoil. From the walls, Priam and Hecuba witness the destruction of their son's body. Their cries echo unanswered. Andromache, unaware at first, learns the truth only after hope has already taken shape in her mind. The city does not erupt, it goes silent. Hector's death is not the end of Troy, but it makes the end inevitable. The man who held the city together is gone. What remains is grief and the knowledge that nothing now stands between Achilles and the walls. For Achilles, the killing does not bring peace. Patroclus remains dead. The emptiness he feels cannot be filled by vengeance. The duel that should have ended the war instead exposes its futility. 2 men have fulfilled their roles exactly as their world demanded. One lies dead, the other is consumed. And Troy stands, wounded beyond repair, waiting for what must come next. After Hector's death, the war does not end. It pauses. The battlefield falls quiet, in a way that feels unnatural, as though even violence itself needs time to absorb what has occurred. The body of Troy's defender lies outside the walls, bound and broken, while within the city grief spreads without restraint. For the Trojans, mourning is immediate and communal. Priam and Hecuba do not hide their suffering. Their cries move through the streets, carrying permission for others to grieve openly. Andromache collapses when she learns the truth, her body giving way under the weight of futures erased. Hector's death is not only the loss of a warrior, it is the loss of order. He was the one who balanced caution with courage, the one who argued for restraint even as he fought relentlessly. Without him, Troy's leadership fractures into fear and resignation. The walls still stand, but the sense of protection they once offered has dissolved. Outside the city, Achilles does not rest. He continues to abuse Hector's body, dragging it around the tomb of Patroclus day after day. The act brings him no comfort. It is repetition without relief, motion without healing. Each circuit reopens the wound rather than closing it. The gods observe with growing unease. Even those who favor Achilles recoil from the excess. Apollo protects Hector's corpse from decay, preserving its dignity in defiance of Achilles' rage. Zeus watches, weighing not fate this time, but mercy. Patroclus's funeral rites are prepared. For the Greeks, ritual offers structure where meaning has collapsed. Achilles organizes the ceremonies with grim precision. The pyre is built high. Offerings are made. Horses, captives, and possessions are sacrificed alongside Patroclus's body, reflecting both devotion and the brutal logic of the age. Achilles cuts his hair in mourning, a visible severing of the life he once imagined. He speaks to Patroclus as though he can still hear, promising vengeance already fulfilled and grief still unresolved. The funeral games follow. In competition, the Greeks find temporary order. Chariot races, boxing, wrestling, and archery provide outlets for tension that cannot be spoken. Achilles presides not as rival, but as judge, distributing prizes with an even hand. This moment matters. It is the first time since Patroclus's death that Achilles' rage loosens its grip. The games reintroduce proportion. Achievement is measured again. Disputes are settled without blood. But the war's deepest reckoning has not yet arrived. At night, guided by Hermes, Priam leaves Troy alone. He crosses the plain that has consumed his sons, moving through enemy territory not as a king, but as a father. He enters Achilles' tent without armor, without pretense, and kneels before the man who killed his child. Priam does not argue, he does not accuse. He reminds Achilles of his own father. The appeal cuts through everything rage has built. Achilles sees, for the first time since Patroclus's death, a grief that mirrors his own. Two enemies recognize themselves in one another, stripped of rank and destiny. Achilles weeps. The moment does not erase the war, it does not undo the deaths. But it restores something essential that rage had destroyed, the ability to see another human being fully. Achilles agrees to return Hector's body. He orders it cleaned, anointed, and prepared with care. He grants Troy time to mourn properly, suspending the fighting so rites may be observed. When Hector's body is carried back through the gates, the city breathes again, even in despair. The funeral that follows is solemn, deliberate, and final. The Trojans burn their dead. They mourn Hector not as a symbol, but as a man who stood until he could no longer stand. Lamentation fills the city, not with anger, but with remembrance. For Achilles, the encounter with Priam marks a turning point. His fury does not vanish, but it breaks. What remains is grief without illusion, pain acknowledged rather than weaponized. He has reached the limit of what vengeance can offer. The Iliad ends here, not with victory, not with Troy's fall, but with a funeral. The choice is deliberate. The poem closes not on conquest, but on shared humanity, suggesting that even in a world shaped by gods and fate, compassion can surface at the edge of ruin. War continues beyond this point. Troy will fall, Achilles will die. But the story stops where rage gives way to recognition. And that is where its meaning endures. The story ends before the war does. This is deliberate. The Iliad does not follow Troy to its final destruction, nor does it trace Achilles to his own death. It stops earlier, at a quieter and more difficult moment, when rage loosens its grip and recognition takes its place. To understand why, we must look beyond the final scene and consider what the poem is ultimately concerned with preserving. The war does continue. After Hector's funeral, Troy remains under siege. Its walls still stand, but its defenders are diminished. The heroes who remain cannot replace what has been lost. Achilles will fight again, briefly and brutally, before meeting his own end at the hands of Paris, guided by Apollo. Troy will fall through deception rather than strength, undone not by honor but by cleverness. These events belong to the wider Trojan War tradition, not to the Iliad itself. Their absence is meaningful. The poem is not interested in cataloging outcomes. It is interested in examining cost. Achilles' fate is known from the beginning. His choice, to trade length of life for permanence of name, defines the arc of the story. By the end, he has achieved what he sought, but not what he needed. Glory has not restored Patroclus. Vengeance has not brought peace. What remains is understanding, arrived at too late to change anything that matters. This tension is central to the poem's endurance. Achilles is neither villain nor ideal. He is a study in extremes. Unmatched excellence paired with emotional volatility, moral clarity undermined by personal absolutism. His journey does not resolve neatly. It ends suspended between awareness and inevitability. Hector's legacy is different. He does not choose glory over life. He chooses responsibility over safety. His death feels final in a way Achilles does not. Because Hector's role was bound to others, he leaves behind a city that must now face its fate without him. The contrast between the two men is not a judgment, it is a question. What does it mean to live well in a world shaped by violence and obligation? The Iliad offers no single answer. Instead, it presents a series of moments where choices are made under pressure, where values collide, and where consequences arrive regardless of intent. The gods, too, are revealed without reverence. They are powerful but limited, eternal but petty. Their interventions magnify human suffering without resolving it. They enforce fate but do not escape it. In doing so, they reflect the instability of the world the poem inhabits, a world where control is partial and certainty is rare. This perspective shaped Greek identity for centuries. The Iliad was not merely entertainment. It was education, moral inquiry, cultural memory. Greeks learned how to speak, argue, and reason through its lines. Heroes were measured against its standards. Failure and excellence alike were understood through its examples. Its influence extends far beyond antiquity. Themes introduced here, rage, honor, grief, compassion, echo through later literature, philosophy, and art. From tragedy to modern war narratives, the questions the Iliad raises continue to resurface because they are unresolved. The poem endures because it does not comfort. It does not promise that suffering is justified, or that the right side wins, or that virtue guarantees survival. It insists only that actions matter, that grief is shared, and that recognition of another's humanity can exist even at the edge of destruction. This is why the final image is not a battlefield but a funeral. Hector is mourned, his name is spoken, his body is returned to the earth with care. The cycle of violence pauses long enough for memory to assert itself. That pause is the poem's final gift. It reminds us that history is not only shaped by conquest, but by how we remember those who are lost within it. So as we leave the plain before Troy, the war unresolved and the future already written, we carry with us not the sound of clashing bronze, but the quieter weight of shared grief. If you found value in this journey through the Iliad, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps these stories continue to be told slowly, carefully, and without rushing past what matters most. And wherever you're listening from tonight, thank you for being here.